everyone, I'm Rohma Theunissen, and welcome to Curated Conversations, the official podcast series of the Middle East's premier retail and consumer insights hub, Curated Middle East. Curated Conversations is a dynamic platform dedicated to bringing you insightful, high-value industry information that focuses specifically on the evolving landscape in the MENA region. Join us as we speak to some of the region's most prominent movers and shakers as they share their knowledge, experiences, and stories to help you navigate all of the changes we face in the industry today. Hi everyone. Today we're joined by a dear friend of mine and esteemed ex-colleague, Milli Midwood. At the start of 2020, Milli was appointed Editor-in-Chief of Cosmopolitan Middle East, and at 28, she was the youngest person to ever assume that role. She has since then, despite all of the challenges and hurdles, repositioned the publication as a force to be reckoned with within the publishing industry in the Middle East. Milli, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
That was such a nice intro, thanks.
It's all true. Comes from the heart, and it's so good to see you. I haven't seen you since before the pandemic, and you've been busy.
Yeah, to say the least, yeah. It's been a very interesting 5 months for everybody.
How's it going?
It's good. I mean, it's obviously come with a lot of trials and tribulations, for sure. There's definitely been some pros and cons. I mean, when I started the role, it was a huge career jump for me, and I really needed to be in a position physically where I was surrounded by people that I could learn from and consistently ask questions. And that didn't happen. 2 months after I started, we all had to start working from home, and suddenly all my resources, all the people that had been in the same role longer than I had, that I really needed to be able to tap into, I didn't have access to anymore. So that was really tough. But now, in retrospect, when I do look back, there's been a lot of pros to also come out of this. I think one of the main things that I keep thinking is that it gave me the chance to really learn the brand inside out, which I don't think I would have been able to do if the world was still turning, because March and April are event season. It's really busy, and I would have been out of the office so much, rushing around trying to do too many things at once. And this really kind of gave me a chance to actually just sit down with no distractions and really focus on Cosmo.
I think a lot of us have felt that if we don't have the social and the corporate pressures per se that come with going to work, attending these events, networking, everything that comes with the industry, that we've had the chance to think about really what are we doing in our day-to-day and how to make things better. I think there's a lot of creativity that's come out of the lockdown and the pandemic as a positive, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've all kind of had to adapt really quickly and change. Editorial calendars went out the window. You know, the calendar that I had been planning for so long to start this shiny new role, out the window.
How far before did you plan that calendar?
I had kind of planned my dream lineup for the next 12 months. Obviously, things were sort of bound to change here and there, but everything from kind of cover stars, big events happening at certain times. Careers is one of our big pillars of Cosmo, when universities shut down and we could no longer do Cosmo on campus. So we had to sort of really look at everything and reorganize.
I think everyone's calling it a pivot. A strategy pivot. A lot of industries have had to deal with that. A lot of businesses have had to deal with that. And with your pivot, when you had to decide to pivot your strategy for Cosmo, how did you go about it? Did you notice a change in the manner in which your readers were consuming content?
I mean, definitely everyone was online a lot more. Because a lot of the reason was because they simply didn't have anything else to do. People that weren't working were just spending a lot more time online. But people were also looking for escapism. They were looking for ways to distract themselves from all the bad news that kept preceding us on the news and on our Twitter feeds and everything. And Cosmo's always been a really positive brand. So we really kind of leaned into that. We've always been about fun, frivolous content. And that's exactly what we wanted to bring to our readers. And we saw a huge spike in traffic because of it. And our readers really enjoyed it. So that was great.
You say fun and frivolous, but one of the things I really noticed about what you were doing as an editor personally was putting out content that was on everyone's mind, issues that everyone was thinking about, but no one really addressed. How was the reaction to these pieces that you put out?
That's a good question, because opinion pieces are, I think, so important. Cosmo is a brand of the younger generation, and we need to be instilling these kind of, for example, body positivity, or whether it's sustainability, or whether it's anti-racism. We need to be the voice catching those young women who are kind of in their late teens that are still developing their ideas about the world. And we want to be feeding them the right content. Like, by the way, you don't have to be a size 8 to be accepted in society. And I think that's why that content's really important. It has been really, really well received. But at the same time, it's just all about balance, really.
I think that's a challenge for a lot of different brands, not just in publishing right now, is understanding how to cater to the new generation whilst not losing their previous audience. Which takes me to my next question, actually. I think what you're doing at Cosmo is so indicative of the Generation Z focused, digital first world that is to come. And it's not far off. I mean, Generation Z are the biggest generation the world has ever seen, and they are at university now. They're beginning to enter the workforce. Cosmo Middle East is really the first publication in the region that's really catering to this generation. But at the same time, like you just said, you're maintaining relevancy to your millennial audience who have been so loyal to you for so long. I would love to understand how, from your side, you've seen this shift in strategy being received by your readers, the old ones and the new ones.
So adopting a digital first strategy was something I really, really campaigned for from the very beginning of when I was applying for this role. I know that Gen Z women and men, they get their news from Instagram. They get their beauty hacks from TikTok. You know, they're not buying newspapers. They're not even going online as much as millennials are. You know, it really is social media and websites. But I wanted to move a lot of the focus and time and efforts onto digital. And if TikTok, for example, is where our readers' attention is, well, that's where we're going to be. You know, we're going to be creating beauty hacks for TikTok if we know that that's where they're going for beauty hacks. And it's worked phenomenally. I mean, we posted, just as an example, a beauty review on TikTok that got 300,000 views in the first 24 hours. And
wow,
that kind of reach doesn't happen with print. And print is amazing. Magazines really do serve their purpose for certain reasons, but digital is instant and it's global.
Despite digital's reach and agility, which no one can really argue with, why do you think the Middle East continues to focus so much on print?
I definitely think it's shifting. I don't think they are focusing that much on print anymore. There's a lot of publications that are definitely leading the way with digital. A lot of magazines have gone bi-weekly, bi-monthly, or they've gone digital only. And I do think it is heading in a more digital direction because, like you said, you can't deny that digital is the way forward. I think print will always be the backbone of a lot of brands. It's really important for that reason. And the Middle East has always been a few years behind the rest of the world, maybe like 5 years behind the rest of the world. So I think give it 5 years and we'll be kind of competing with the rest of the world.
And what about print though? What happens with print? It's no secret, advertising revenues have been slashed drastically, and not just in the region, on a global scale. I mean, we saw Vogue in the US for the very first time group an issue together. That's never ever happened in the history of Vogue. I refer to Vogue because it is considered the kind of ultimate lifestyle fashion publication. What's the future of print now?
The same thing happened with Cosmo in the US. They did a May-June issue and now they've released a July-August issue, and that's the first time that's ever happened.
There you go.
I think, so we have actually just moved to double issues at Cosmo. It was, again, that was something that I really, really campaigned for when I started, because I think double issues makes a lot more sense. Our readers don't have the appetite for a print magazine every month. They have the appetite for daily Instagram videos and YouTube videos. So that's where we should be really shifting our effort and time and money and resources. But I mean, that's the golden question, isn't it? That's what everyone wants to know. What about print? Like, that is the ultimate question. No one knows.
I actually wrote a piece for Curated, this was a while ago, and if you look at print publications, the manner in which they are developed and consumed has not changed since the 50s. And we live in a really different world now. And we have digital, which is far more efficient in delivering news, trends, expert pieces. So my thought was, what if print became less dispensable and more collectible?
I completely agree with that. And I was actually just going to say, when I look at the magazines that I've collected over the last kind of 10, 15 years, I look at them and I think, why have I kept you instead of a bunch of others that I bought that month? And it's always because there's something collectible about them. There's a lot of titles internationally at the moment that are doing kind of never before covers. And they know exactly why they're doing that. It's because it kind of signifies a change in the media industry. And for example, our May-June issue, we had Hindash on the cover, who was the first ever male cover star of Cosmo Middle East. That issue and that cover was so well received. People were tagging us on Instagram, going out and buying it just because it was such a milestone issue. And one of the big features that we had in there that I really wasn't expecting to sort of strike a chord with as many people as it did was we did a roundup of the best 100 beauty products of all time, and people just went mad for it. And I thought, actually, that's really interesting, because that is the kind of thing that you would look back on in 10 years and you would want to know in 2020 what were the biggest beauty products.
And you said of all time, you didn't say now, which I think really makes a huge difference, because then you target a much bigger audience rather than just the people who are really trend driven. You're also looking at people who don't consume as beauty as often as, say, the Gen Zers, they're really into their trends and their colored eyeshadows. Whereas I think that was a brilliant strategy. It's timeless content, isn't it?
Yeah. And that doesn't mean that every issue you put out has to be this kind of milestone commentary on, where the world is. But yeah, those are the ones that you do hang on to.
Definitely. Whilst we're on the topic of timelessness and kind of the strategy of print moving forward, at Cosmo, you've surrounded yourself with Gen Zers to cater to their mindset. And very few people have had that experience, because this is the first batch of their generation that has entered the workforce. How do you think their thought process differs from the millennial thought process in terms of readership and in terms of how they consume content and what they think of publishing per se?
Yeah, so Gen Z will never know a time without digital. Like, you and I will remember a time before WhatsApp, before Instagram, before Facebook. That will never be the case with Gen Z. And for that reason, digital is kind of innately part of their skill set now. And whenever I hire a new junior assistant, intern, whoever it may be, they know how to edit videos far beyond my skill set, even though I've been in digital media for longer than they have. And it's not even a big deal to them. And that's just one of the very small things that that comes so easily to them, just because of their demographic, and that's kind of the norm for them. And I also think it's just so important to surround yourself with who your reader is. And I run everything I do past these girls. Everything goes through them.
You put up something the other day that made me laugh, because I know your social media and content manager, Sarah.
Yeah.
And she is brilliant.
Yeah.
The Urban Dictionary to my Oxford Dictionary, that is so on point.
And if that doesn't sum up that relationship, I don't know what does. I mean, Sarah, who runs our social media, she's so good, and she said the other week that it was her birthday, and she was out with some friends, and she just sat with them and was like, what would make you swipe up on a Cosmo Insta story? And she got all of their insight, because they are the 21-year-old young women that we want to be reaching. So we want to know from the horse's mouth, so to speak, what they would swipe up for. So everything that we do at Cosmo goes through these girls first, because I want to know, is the reader gonna want to read this? When I have an article idea or an interview idea or a celebrity in mind, I always speak to the girls first, and I think, do your friends want to read about this? And sometimes they'll turn around and go, no. And I need to take a step back because it's maybe too personal for me. I really want to write about interiors. I love interiors. And my girls are like, no, like,
no one cares.
No, we're too young. We don't have our own place. Like, it's, that's not going to happen.
What did you learn about your audience? Are there any insights? Did something surprise you about your readers, or was it what you expected it to be?
Yeah, definitely surprising. So as you know, obviously you were there. We worked together at Harper's,
yeah.
And there would be certain celebrities that we would cover on Harper's that we knew always would perform really well. I kind of thought they would perform well globally. Like, I thought every publication's readers would want to read about them. Not the case at all. There are the Royals, for example. The Cosmo readers are not interested in what Kate Middleton is wearing. God.
The Harper's readers,
they love to, yeah. And I
content.
thought that was, but no, the Gen Zers, they don't want to know about that. They love reality TV, which is hilarious and great, and it's something that we can really have fun with as well, which is why we've interviewed people like Christine Quinn from Selling Sunset, which was just so left field. But I love that Cosmo is a brand that can do that we can tap into reality TV stars. The more kind of hard-hitting opinion pieces that we've spoken about as well, I was really nervous to start posting them because I was worried that maybe with a younger audience, they wouldn't really care as much about those. I think maybe I was worried that they might find it a bit preachy or a bit like we were kind of shoving these opinions down their throat. But the feedback to that has been phenomenal. And
even from the younger audience.
Yeah. And I get a lot of young girls messaging me on Instagram off the back of those kind of posts saying, thank you so much for sharing this. And that was a reaction that I didn't get before at previous publications. So yeah, it has been really interesting. I kind of thought there was more of a trend in readers in the Middle East, but actually there's more of a discrepancy between the two readers, between Harper's and Cosmo. And I know that sounds like it's a really obvious thing to say, but and also I think one of the things that also surprised me about Gen Z readers is they're really, really nuanced. They're really, they can read an article about Disney and then be equally as interested in an article about anti-racism. And I think we put young women sometimes in a box that they can only be one thing and they can only think about one thing. And they're so nuanced with their opinions and their beliefs. And it's really interesting to see how many different thoughts they have and opinions they have about everything.
What do they really care about? This is the Generation Z woman. What's important to her?
Shaping the future, to be honest with you. Gen Z are really vocal about their beliefs. They're kind of at that age where they're developing their opinions and they're not afraid to talk about it. And I think because they've grown up in the age of social media, it is the norm for them to share their opinions on everything. And they're growing up far more feminist than our age bracket did. Yeah. And they're not afraid to talk about that. Gen Z have a lot to teach us, They are woke.
They're so progressive.
They are so woke. It's unbelievable. And yeah, I think we have a lot to learn from them.
It's a really interesting demographic because obviously the millennials have struggled with kind of finding a footing in the workplace. A lot of us graduated around the time of the 2008, 2009 crash, and now we have this. But I think this is a tougher economy than what we had even back then. And like you said, Generation Z is so capable. They're so multifaceted. What advice would you have to someone of that generation looking to break into publishing right now? What can they do?
I would say look at the publication that you want to work with. Don't just be blindly sending out CVs or emails or whatever it is to just try and get anywhere. Look at the publications you really want to work at and offer that editor something that you think is really missing. If I get an email from someone, we don't have any positions available at the moment, for example, but if I got an email from someone saying, this is what I think Cosmo needs, this is my skill set, and this is how I can produce it, you'll find a way to get that person on your team, even if it's in a freelance capacity, if it's on a project basis. But I would say look for where your skills can be a real asset to the brand.
It's all about adding value, isn't it? Especially at times like these. Well, thank you so much for that.
Thanks.
And thank you for your time. I know we've gone over, but
it was fun.
Really fascinating conversation.
It was fun talking to you.
Thank you.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, please make sure you hit subscribe and leave us a comment below, as we would love to hear from you. Also, be sure to head over to www.curatednow.me and sign up for the official Curated Middle East newsletter. Thanks for listening.